Hi, everyone. Happy Freya. Welcome to episode 17. And Happy New Year, by the way. It's 2023. We made it. I think we all deserve an award for that. I have an amazing guest today here. Special guest Jeff Selver is here today. So thank you, Jeff, so much for being on the show.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Jeff has a background in the banking industry. As a financial advisor, he's a musician and the author of the Alien Plan to Build an Enlightened City on Planet Earth. This is a really profound story, and I really appreciate your bravery and your courage in speaking about your contact experience, because I know there's like a lot of stigma involved to it, and like, how do you integrate that into like everyday life and your family and your friends? So it's a very bold move on your part, but I feel like you needed to do it.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, you got it. Yeah.
So we're gonna start here today with Jeff's awakening moment and when he started to remember everything about his contact experience, because this is a mind-blowing story when you started to remember.
Yeah, you got it. So the moment that it all happened, so to understand that piece, to understand how it all kind of unraveled and started, you have to know that an event happened to me when I was 20 years old that was utterly mysterious. And I actually knew about aliens. I had read Whitley Strieber's books at the time, but this didn't seem alien, and it just seemed to be this. The only way I frame it, I have more detail in the book, but it's basically a consciousness event, something that was so shocking and that it was traumatic. It was so extreme, it altered me on the inside and outside in my body, and these kind of sensations. And it was paired with a message to leave my life. And it wouldn't stop and go away until I left my life. And so I made this bold choice to just, leave. There were all these synchronicities even. It was like a message, a spiritual message, if you will. So when I left to go traveling. Throughout a 2.5-year period, I saw these lights in the sky. They were consistent. They seemed to be following me. But they were orbs, basically. That's what it seemed like. But they were always kind of connected. I wouldn't look up at the sky for a day or whatever. All of a sudden, for whatever reason, I look up and this thing is there, almost like it's over top of me, shining a light on me, and then it disappears. Or it would be there and then it would move and then it would disappear. And so it would display these weird movements. Some people would see them with me. Sometimes there were different colors, red and blue. And sometimes there were different effects. I would see reflections off clouds where I didn't see an object, but there was obviously something moving because it was shining weird shadows and it was blue color. So there's all these weird things going on around me, and I didn't know what to make of it. I wrote about it. There's kind of evidence in my own little world. I wrote a song called "Those Who the Stars Who Follow Me." So it was like this, but it was all personal, right? So you don't think of it as alien contact. You think it was just you and this, maybe it's spiritual, and you had no idea. Then a set of synchronicities had me leaving traveling too. So it really seemed to be this strange period of my life that was paired with kind of mysticism and spirituality, and it led me to a spiritual teacher. So it all kind of made sense in my own personal mythos, right? Like this, it all made sense. Some way I didn't understand it, what happened to me, but it just made sense in a spiritual way. So I kind of left it like that. Yeah. It was literally maybe 15 to 20 years later, I really started to say, what was all that? When you get a real distance perspective from your life, you kind of say, you're like, that made no sense. I had this profound kind of consciousness experience. Why did that happen to me? And how did it happen? And it made no sense to me. And that sat with me for probably several years, trying to unravel it. I was trying to do research on it, trying to figure out what actually was that and how did it occur. It wasn't alien. I didn't even think aliens. I didn't even go the aliens and UFOs. Literally, this stuff was not on my plate. I considered myself not an aliens and UFO guy. And I randomly watched a documentary on Jeremy Corbell. Jeremy Corbell's a documentary on Bob Lazar. So that Bob Lazar documentary he did, which is really good. And it's grounded, right? Like, because the alien and UFO world is very, you don't know half the stuff and who's talking and what they're talking about. So this seemed grounded, and I was like really blown away by it, and it seemed very legit. And it had me questioning all stuff I had alien contact I had heard about when I was a kid, reading these kind of books about the mysterious and you know, Betty and Barney Hill kind of content. So
Right,
I
yeah.
ended up finding a UFO a YouTube channel. Basically, it's called Finding UFO. So anyway, and all it is just orbs. People kind of, you know, take pictures or videos of their orbs and weird objects in the sky. No commentary. He doesn't tell you what he thinks it is. It's just videos. He's the person who owns the channel isn't even on the channel. So it's actually really disassociated, and it's just you make your own choice. But whatever was going on with these videos was stirring things inside me. And I started, and then in that channel is brief documentaries about early contact events, the 70s, like Alan Godfrey and Betty and Barney Hill. Not this whole world of experiencers and people who've had contact all their lives and all this stuff. Like, I didn't even know that could occur, right? And so I was getting into this out of curiosity. That's all it was. But when that happened, those lights that had followed me came back at that period of my life. And that freaked me out because they actually stopped after the traveling, and it seemed connected to me, and I didn't understand it at the time. But then it just started repeating itself. I started seeing them in the sky the exact same way. They would kind of be directly above me, shining a bright light. They would move in weird ways. And that kind of started to freak me out that there was a connection here, and I didn't know what the connection was. And of course it's touching something subconscious, and that's disturbing me because behind it was this whole other sub life I had no idea had occurred behind my life there. And yeah,
it didn't occur to you at the time the specific memories, all right? It was just, what are the orbs and the curiosity of just being driven to UFO content and trying to find understanding and meaning to it.
No, like being driven to the UFO content was like a casual. I thought it was going to be a hobby. I was like, oh, I'm very drawn to this. I don't know. I really want to know about this. I didn't even. The lights came after I started getting into it. It's like in response. They kind of like for me, it's like a vibration had opened up. Something was unraveling itself in my subconscious, and then they responded to that. It's almost kind of the sensation, and when that happened, there began. So in a couple things happened, but me and my wife also had a sighting, and then it was a kind of a metal orb in the daytime, and we took pictures and stuff. And eventually, I started noticing a voice. It sounds really schizophrenic to talk like that, but you know, I have a psychology degree, and anyway, so it wasn't that, but bottom line is I didn't know what to make of it, and I wasn't treating it that seriously, but it was responding to my world in kind of positive ways. And I started to wonder.
Are you talking about telepathic communication? Yeah, okay.
At the time I didn't know. Okay. And I started to wonder if it was something to do with these objects that I was seeing in the sky that were kind of connected to this traveling period. And then one day it gave him like kind of a command to do this thing, and I said to it back, only if you show yourself. And then instantaneously outside my window, a bright white orb flew across the sky, and then it just quickly disappeared. It was like there, and it went, and literally it was not. I mean, it's impossible to have been a meteor. It didn't have a tail. It was an orb. It was in the atmosphere, and it was close too. It wasn't even like way off in the mountains. It was in my neighborhood here, and I then privately knew something was really going on here, and I didn't know what it was. I then learned that alien contact, it can be, people have alien contact, it can be buried in people's heads. Literally, the aliens obscure memories. And I didn't really even know that part too. I remember Whitley Strieber stuff, but I wasn't studying Whitley Strieber's content when I was reading it. I wasn't trying to learn. I was like reading it like it was science fiction. And when I heard that, it was actually Alan Godfrey in an interview who had alien contact, and he was saying he didn't remember his contact because it all kind of got exposed in hypnotic regression. And when that was said, I kind of was like, what? It is buried in the mind of the contactee? Like, I couldn't wrap my head around it, but it hit something in me when I kind of like tried to understand that. Anyway, I had a meditation, and in this meditation, I was questioning that crazy consciousness event in my 20s. And I said to myself out loud, oh, it must have been, this book I was reading that did that. And that crazy voice of that crazy from the crazy object said, "No, it was our meeting with you when you were a young teenager." And I went, "No, no," and I panicked. I
Yeah.
literally panicked at all of this. Aliens are talking to me in my head. Orbs are aliens. I had alien contact. All of it was like, no, 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 no. And I was literally saying, no, 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 no. And I was like, I don't want this. And then literally just I went to have a shower, and in the shower my mind went to this memory, and in it was an owl behind my house when I was a teenager. And then I kind of went, wait a minute, what is this memory? And I realized I'd never seen an owl here. What is this? And then I put together, I remember from Willie Strickler's books, the owl was kind of this, could be a screen memory. And I thought, no, like I remember this memory. I didn't think anything of it. And it's this strange, it's actually not even a memory. It's not even me walking up to an owl. It's literally just this location I know in Mundy Park in Coquitlam. And there was an owl there. And I didn't know what that meant. And I felt it connected to this alien saying this thing. And then eventually I got the courage to figure out what the hell this was. I drove out there. And when I did, and I brought that memory up, I could feel at a young teenage years, I had been lured out there, and could feel the displacement of two memories. One of what I thought occurred, and then underneath it was something else. And I could feel that it was a friendly presence. I could feel it knew me. I could feel I could feel it. Anyway, I could feel the displacement, not knowing anything. I had no idea what it was, but I could just feel that something else had occurred, and I didn't know about it for the rest of my life. And so it was this kind of displacement that had gone on, and I didn't know what it meant. And then I left it, but that was July 1st, 2019. That was the day I confirmed for myself these orbs, this crazy voice, telepathy, and then the screen memory, and then that location. I had alien contact, and I didn't know what it meant. And I was quite terrified actually at the time. I assumed it was like all the stuff I'd been reading and writing at that point, which was very biological, very unpersonal, very intrusive, like menacing, right? And I thought that's what it was. I thought it was going to be terrifying, and I didn't want to know about it. And I left it, and I didn't even know who to tell in my life. And it was like that. And that lasted for about a couple months before I kind of decided it's time to start understanding this. And then the flashbacks were occurring at that point. I didn't even touch anything, and I started seeing myself on crafts and the Elder, and I would see these moments that I didn't know when they occurred or where they occurred, and I could feel they had occurred. And also, they're not just like people would think a flashback is something I'm generating now about the past, but it's not. It's these 16-year-old moments and these 17-year-old moments that are like, oh my, and I can feel how they connected to the present moment of that guy's life, the 17-year-old life. So it was literally like I was witnessing pieces that my teenage years didn't know occurred. And they were there emotionally. It was like all the emotions of that 17-year-old or 18-year-old were still preserved in that memory. And I knew this was legitimate, and I didn't know what to do with it all. And eventually took upon myself to do the hypnotic regressions to get everything out, and that's kind of how it all went.
Thank you. So it's kind of like it gradually was kind of integrating into your life slowly, so not to have like that shock trauma response of having all those memories come all at once, and then also having a support system in place so that you had somebody to share it with, which sounds like this is the part in your story where you do the hypnosis.
You got it. Yeah, you got it. Sorry, it's exciting. Yeah. What's fascinating about this is I think the aliens themselves were aware of that process. So they seem to be, my mind blocked the very biological stuff for the first kind of round of hypnotic regressions. My mind blocked content that was disturbing, and I could feel them being the ones to say, hey, look, like, not look, like force you, but a brief moment of, hey, look at that. And then I would spend days or weeks processing, oh my God, I think something I don't want to know about occurred here. And I think that they were, they were very aware of that process. It was actually really interesting. And I think that's part of it too. When you look at my book, the aliens actually opened the memories up at 2016, and I don't learn about it till 2019, 3 years later. So the aliens definitely are aware that the human mind cannot be forced into these memories, that it has to have a slow process and a gentle nudging, if you will. Yeah.
And it's an emotional process as well, because I mean, I hear often with the ETs that emotions seem kind of foreign, like the human emotions, because we have such a vast array. We feel fear and pride and anger and rage and happiness and bliss and joy. And, you know, when you uncover these memories, not only the shock, but just the processing and all of that definitely seems to be a part of it. Tremors
Yeah.
included.
Yeah. No, it's I don't really wish it on anybody. And you know, maybe it's a bit different now with there's a lot of information coming out, but
There
even
is.
as the memories were coming out for me, the Pentagon hadn't gone public with their information. So that kind of almost makes it okay for a contactee to say, listen, you can't not believe me because the Pentagon is saying weird things are in the sky now. So but that wasn't there yet at the time that I
Right.
was coming out. So yeah.
And what was your experience after hypnosis? Did that bring out the clear memories of the owl, the screen memories, like what really occurred during those times, or?
Yeah. I had to piece it together. I definitely had to piece it together. Um, the regression, like, so there was the flashbacks,
Okay.
and in some cases, I had flashbacks of the entire contact event. But literally, flashbacks are literally me just walking to work, driving, meditating, doing my daily life, and all of a sudden being like, what? Wait, what? And then all of a sudden it's like I can feel this event happen when I was it's my subconscious saying you need to know these things, right? Like it's the one trying to digest it, and it's saying blah, and it kind of pops out a memory, and these memories are distinct. This isn't just a feel good thing, right? Like I
was gonna say, did it feel like vomit in a way? It's like, it's like, oh my God, there's just something that needs to come out.
Vomit. Yeah, mental vomit.
Mental vomit.
Mental vomit. You know what? Mental vomit. Yes, it was a 2-year process of mental vomiting. I would agree with that.
Okay.
Yeah, it is a whole other bag. And you know, a lot of people would say like, oh, they just don't get it. I had personal friends who were like, this got to be a dream, man. But you know,
Right.
there was who was it? John Mack actually has a really good quote that about the subconscious brain, that the subconscious could never generate the narrative. And that's the bottom line here. I'm not dealing with individual memories of alien contact that I wished could occurred to me. This is every moment the alien would refer back to, or I would remember back to the other contact events, or they would say something that they'd spoke about previously, or they would say something they'd spoke about 10 contact events ago. So there was a narrative going on here. My subconscious has no ability to do this. So it was combined with the flashbacks, combined with the hypnotic regression, and not just that. I had to piece it together. I had to understand the micro details. But there are some surprising things about the mind. And, you know, the mind, I'm going to tell you that the mind retains even your own conversations that you don't believe it retains. Like, you know, you might have broken up with a friend, you know, when you're 16, and that stuff is retained, and you can go back into getting that memory, not in the physical brain, but they're having, you know, there's some science now that the memory is beyond physical brain, and that's what happened here, where I'm remembering the conversations. I can get that she said very important things to me, and it all comes out. Some of it in flashback, some of it in just memory, and some of it in hypnotic regression. So yeah, it was a bunch of things that I needed to piece together, and it's impossible to have made up, because I'm the 17-year-old self, I'm the 20-year-old self who just had the rising, and now this is how he feels. This is exactly how he feels. Like my brain can't even wish to comprehend something like that. You know?
I totally get you on all of that. Even as a QHHT practitioner, because I do hypnosis with people, the stories and the timelines are just so detailed, and then they're going through an emotional response.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's coming out. You can't fake fear.
Yeah.
You can't fake crying. You can't
Yeah.
fake these emotions that are coming
Yeah.
out. And
Yeah.
and obviously there's a time and place to do it. Can you describe to me some of your profound experiences and your memories of, like, because you have some really clear ones of making contact, I believe, with the Greys, unless there's another species you're dealing with.
You're talking about childhood? Or are you talking about overall?
Overall, let's go with overall, because I know at because there's one that you had in Toronto as well in your when you're coming out of your building and you're meeting
That
you know
woman. Yeah, the
so
woman turned out to be an alien. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Totally wacky, man. Totally wacky.
Yeah,
I would say the most profound is the White Room.
is the White Room. Okay, let's go
Yeah.
into that.
Yeah, the White Room is this. And what's crazy, right? Again, you think, oh, he's just making things up, blah, blah, blah. Well, then what happens when all your stuff matches other contactees you've never met in your life, right? Like that's either we're all collectively having a new disease. It should be called abductionism, right? That's like this is the joke about it all, right? Like,
Right.
I want someone to tell me this. Please tell me about abductionism, that thing you discover when you're 40s and you think you've been abducted half your life, because I committed, like my life had been altered from this, right? So, but when it starts matching other people's stuff to this crazy degree, you've got, like, this happened to you, right? And that's the bottom line. So Susie Hansen been to a room like this. Linda Porter, who's in Linda Moulton Howe's book, went to a soul transfer room that the Mantis was involved with, and I had an experience where the Mantis was involved in mine. I can't even make this stuff up. Like, this matches mine to such a crazy degree. So, okay.
And I hear about this often. The Mantis is usually part of like the initial contact, and there definitely seems to be like an age when the memories come back for people whenever they're ready to.
Yeah, and you got to understand from their perspective and the human's perspective. You can't live your life you can't operate in this planet if you had the full memories of the contact event in the moment that they occurred. You just can't. I would have been a complete disarray 16-year-old, and my ego just couldn't have handled it. So I see this very intelligence about giving humans kind of crazy experiences, if you will, and then waking them up at an age with which they can process it properly. Mm-hmm. So it's like they are the ones understanding human psychology, but there's other things going on here. They understand timelines, so they know what's going to happen in your life. So then they're giving you experiences that you'll be able to digest with the proper information at different periods. Totally insane, right? Like, this is where this all goes. So, so the White Room is this. It's the best. Oh, I want to quickly reframe something. I said the Mantis being. I always try to make it clear that I never witnessed an actual Mantis-looking creature, but he clearly is the same archetype. It's this kind of leader. I call him the leader in my book, and it's just a thing I want to clarify, because I never actually witnessed a Mantis, and this thing plays the same role. It seems to be an archetype, and this guy was the same. Anyway, similar features, but.
Was it you felt a presence that felt like a Mantis? Is that why you refer to him?
No, because I learned later that everyone's experience of the Mantis matches this, which is a leader of the program. He's a leader of the program, is what it was. And so, and I didn't have any concept about Mantis creatures and all this stuff. And I pulled out these memories, and this thing did not look like a Mantis, though it's had similar features. The eyes are on the side of the head, big cat-like eyes, like yellow with the slits, and it had a horse face, almost like a nozzle, but then its arms kind of rested like that, so it had like an almost Mantis look to it, but it was like an aardvark. It's always how I always kind of explained it, like an aardvark. So
what color is it?
It was kind of a brownish, like a brownish color, and so he was a crazy looking creature. But once I learned about people's experiences of this Mantis, everything matched. And in fact, I talked to other contactees, and we all kind of feel like it's the father figure of the program, right? And that's exactly how I felt, and we all kind of had similar feelings from it. So I call it, I'm loose about it, I call it Mantis, but it's technically, I never experienced an actual Mantis being kind of thing. So small distinction. But okay, back to the White Rooms. So the White Room was a dimension space, a dimensional room, and the best way to, I don't even know how to frame it. When you walk in, there's no floor, there's no walls, there's no ceiling. It is this massive empty space, and yet you're standing and you're walking on something. And then the beings, whatever they can do here, they can do crazy things. I don't know where my body went, but it seemed to have dissolved, and what was left was an orb. So I collapsed into an orb experience. I had this kind of bliss rush, and and then the aliens had the exact same experience. So what happened when I was 16, what's obvious to me is that they were trying to say, see, we're the same as you, right? No need to be scared here. We're all the same kind of idea, right? So that kind of familiarity immediately was with me for the rest of my contact events. I never had to be scared of them, even though they're crazy looking creatures. We are just all the same. We're all spirits in the core. And we shared in this experience. We played, and it was joyful, and it was beautiful, and it was this other dimensional thing. It's not my conscious mind is only comprehending it, but I have never achieved that state ever in my waking life since. Though the rising was obviously this 20-year-old contact event the 20-year-old consciousness event that made me travel modeled itself off of being in the White Room. So the aliens had some kind of plan to use this to make this 20-year-old experience happen. And so anyway, whatever, it's just this crazy experience, and it's almost beyond words. And then within that, they once we're done kind of playing, or we're having this great experience playing, she says, come in, and she turns herself into a portal, having no idea that other contactees have seen gray aliens turn into portals. I thought that was really interesting. And she turns herself into a portal, like a giant portal, and she says, come in. Then
the she character. This is not the Mantis father figure.
The elder. Yeah. So so the one gray alien that I really end up having a relationship with, like kind of the one who gets to know me the most, is the elder. Yeah. Okay. And so it's her. She's kind of the lead gray alien throughout my entire contact events.
Okay. Thank you.
And so she brought me into the White Room, and then she's the one who turned herself into a portal while I was an orb. And then she says, come in. And then I go inside, and I'm witnessing the death of my last life. So they're showing me myself dying so I'm a spirit overlooking a body. But because it's me, I can share in the experience immediately. So I know it's me. I'm like, oh, that's me. And I can feel time. I can feel that's just only 70 years ago. Like I can feel the sense of time of, so here I am as a 16-year-old staring at my 1930s self, and who had just died. And then I'm witnessing it. I'm having this kind of shared experience in awe, but it was sad. Now, there's an overarching picture here that I was in the Holocaust in my last life. I now know that all that information's all been cleared up for me. So I'm witnessing the death of my Jewish self in the last life in the Holocaust. And so he's sad. He's crying actually as he's dead. He's kind of a dead spirit, and he's in ghost realm or whatever he is. And he's sad. He's crying. But here I am as the 16-year-old witnessing it all. And I'm like, and I'm in shock. I live forever. The birth and death life cycle is real, and the afterlife is real. Oh my God. And I'm having this kind of epiphany about it all. And then I'm also like, oh, I'm so sad for it. What the hell happened? And yet I'm like, but holy crap, I'm that. That's totally insane. And it goes and it goes and it goes. And then they show me it going into the afterlife. So then they're like, watch this. And I can feel the elder behind me almost, watch this. And she wants me to see. So this energy that is me becomes another entity. I would define as the higher self. And it takes some kind of learning to understand that the higher self is not us, but the higher self is in us. It's a part of us. But anyway, I didn't have any of this knowledge at the time. I'm just staring at this thing, but I could feel it was me. But it was the best way I frame it is, anytime you're intuitive, it's your intuitive self turned into a full-on personification. So it has its own identity. Yet we think we're this, but the higher self is the intuitive self, right? And so it is anyway. That's how crazy this goes, and that's why it's profound. And so I'm witnessing this higher self, the afterlife self, if you will.
Okay.
And then the gray aliens come and they interact with it. And so they're showing me A, they're here. B, this was kind of an agreement made before I was born. And there's a whole set of stuff that happens as I watch my higher self.
And I watch here throughout history as well.
Pardon? Say that again.
That they've been here throughout history as well. I mean, that's what they've been in your life cycle, even in different timelines and different years in the 30s and to now.
Well, I don't. You know, what it seemed to be saying was, once that 1930s self died,
okay,
kind of rose up to the afterlife, and then from there they were like, hey, we could use this guy. And so they're like, hey, and so almost like they knew where I'd go. I don't even know what they knew, but they knew something about they could use this guy. So they're like, hey, do you want to do what we're doing here? We're moving into this new world, and humans are going to we need to interact with humans and something like that. And then they're like, do you want to work with us? And then my higher self, not even me, my higher self is the one that says, yeah, I'll do that. And then an agreement is formed. And then the planning of the life of this guy, of me, the planning of me includes the gray aliens. So that's what they were showing me, was that what was happening to me at the 16-year-old self was even meant to be. This is meant to be. And we planned this. We wanted this to happen before you were born, kind of thing. And then they give me all that detail. They show me my higher self planning me. They show me the two together in a craft, my higher self in a craft. And then I'm expelled out, and then I'm born again. And it's this crazy, but it gives me all this awareness of the higher self. It gives me awareness, like, forget even just the whole learning about the agreement. It gave me awareness. It gave me the awareness of the higher self. I'm fully fascinated by this stuff now. This is what I study, and this is what I focus on: past life awareness and the afterlife. And so yeah.
With the higher self, and I'd like your input on that. Is it kind of like it's the broader perspective of all the identities or souls or personas that have lived? I don't want to call it just you, because it's just a broader perspective, but like, it has many identities and personas, players in it.
Right. Okay, this is how I would frame it. Okay. So the higher self actually is its own identity, its own persona. And then we are the offshoots that are the multiple identities.
Yeah, the projections out of it.
Yeah, that's it. Projections out of it. And then it's reusing those projections in a birth and death life cycle. So I'm the thing that keeps being reused over and over and over again, that it's got plans for. But it's technically it. But I'm not it. It's the confusing part about it all. And I'm the thing that, and here's the example of this. So when we come down to, like, Vedic philosophy and kind of spirituality, people get confused that their past lives are their true spiritual self. And that's not correct. That's actually still part of the illusion. The only thing that's that's the true higher self is the present moment experience, not your past selves. And yet it's because your ethereal body is the one repeating itself, living out the birth and death life cycle, while the higher self is a identity that's existing in the present. And using those, time doesn't exist for the higher self is really the way to kind of frame that. But yeah, so I
appreciate that. Thank you. And thank you for our audience as well, because I really want to encourage more of these kind of discussions, because I think they're going to be more in our forefront coming up. And I think a lot of people are going to awaken to their experiences. And at least there are people out there who are coming out and sharing theirs, so that, there's some guidance going to be involved when I almost want to see like a mass memory occurs.
Yeah, something is, agreed. Something is up. Imagine that day when that occurs, right?
Yeah, right, totally. You described in your book about genetic activation. Can you describe to us like what that is and what the purpose of that? Yeah.
Yeah. So this is an interesting point of contention. It's I've had some feedback about it, and I really love the dialogue and the discussion. And the fact is, we don't know. We humans have no science nor nothing behind this. We don't know anything about it. And the aliens know something. And something happened to me. And the way I frame it is this word genetic activation. The way I say this, it's contention, is because I've actually had contactees themselves say, I've had similar experiences to that, and I don't think it's a genetic activation. And they're saying, I think you took these words that you read somewhere and kind of put it on this label. And I said, basically, I was like, I appreciate that, but there's 2 points that I make to that context. Okay. One, what happened to me was 100% something that was latent that the aliens built up. So in my contact events, the aliens give me 2 timelines. They say, we're gonna work with you here and build you up to discover your soul. And then we're gonna, watch you and analyze you afterwards. 2 separate periods. The first period is clear to me in a somatic experience, in the contact events, and just the way it all feels in my body. They were building something up. This consciousness event happens in between. It's the when I'm 20 years old, and it seems to put itself in my body. Whatever we built up seemed to have come into the physical body. It seemed to be embodied, is what it was. Whatever we had built up now became embodied, and it literally felt like a latency turned on. That would be an activation for me.
Okay.
For me, that makes sense, an activation, and it happened on a biological level because there were the cells of my body felt like that light in them. I didn't read this stuff, man. I had no books to go by. So I was just writing in a journal my experience, what was true for me at the time. And so my body, it felt like it affected my body. I actually literally felt, and that 20-year-old self had ideas of going to a laboratory and please study me because I felt like something had changed inside my body. I didn't understand anything about what was going on. And so then after that period, the contact events change in their way they feel in me. I feel like something had been activated in my body, and it becomes activated every time I'm having the contact event for every contact event afterwards. From 20 years old onwards, it's now something biological is occurring to me. And so is that a genetic activation? Well, the words match for me, so I don't really know too much else. And then side to that, contactees saying that, well, I experienced the cells of my body having light afterwards. And my argument is that, yes, that's because your cells are actually being affected by being on alien crafts. I actually go by the science of Bruce Lipton, who is a biologist, and he studied the DNA structure. And the fact is that our conversation is affecting our DNA right now. The food you eat affects your DNA. So yeah, you're going to be on a craft. You're going to be biologically affected. So what happens? Can the aliens, interact and adjust and maybe turn things on that are latent? So there's a mystery going on here, and those words genetic activation do seem to describe what happened to me. Now, other people describe genetic activations, and I just can't speak to that stuff. I don't really know.
For sure.
It's a full mystery, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I love your second question, which is, what's the purpose? Yeah. And I think that all of this speaks to a truth about the human, what the human is. And you know how there's like this idea that we don't use all of the brain. There's like we're only using a fraction of the brain. And right. I would say that's the same thing here. We're only using a fraction of our DNA then. The aliens specifically are showing us that we're only using a fraction of the DNA, and they're the ones who know how to utilize and activate things. So now imagine, so if the aliens are showing us a world here of the afterlife, paranormal, that spirit is real and the body is just a tool, then does that mean that if we embodied that world as a society, that our genetics would change? And that's what I feel like is going on here, that the activation is actually something that maybe the human has the full potential for. Maybe we had that potential in the past and we lived it. Maybe we were living kind of more like consciousness beings who could float and walk through walls like gray aliens could, right?
Right.
And so I feel like there's a connection here between what the aliens show us they can do, float, walk through walls, telepathy, paranormal, all this stuff, and the human is in this dense world who doesn't think they can do it. And we technically don't feel like we can do it. We don't feel like we can start floating off the building, or walk through a wall. But is that what this genetic stuff is? That it's actually latent biology in us that helps with that process of becoming that type of species that could float, could walk through walls, could have a paranormal essence throughout our entire daily walking life, right? Okay. So I think it's about our potential as the human, where we're supposed to be, even maybe where we even have the potential to be, or where we're maybe supposed to be. I don't know about the supposed to, but maybe. And the aliens still know how to play with all those kind of variations.
Okay, thank you for Thank you for describing. I'm actually looking at the time because we're hitting near a 40-minute mark. So I'm going
I
to
told you.
the 2 parts, Jeff, because
Yeah.
you have a lot of great content to share, and I want people to be fully present when they're listening to it. And I know our attention span kind of cuts off at a certain. So what I'm going to do is we're going to obviously continue with the recording, but we're going to save it for another week. We're going to continue with part 2 next Friday, but we're going to go into more of the hybrid children experience. We're going to talk about why are the Greys here, and we haven't even touched the enlightened city, or like there's so many questions still that we just have to like touch on. So stay tuned for next week. I'm going to post it again, part 2, and then we're going to hopefully wrap it up by then. So thank you.